Imagine waking up before sunrise. Your children are already hungry. The grain basket is almost empty. Outside, dark clouds gather over the fields. If this harvest fails, your family may not survive the winter. 1,000 years ago, this wasn't fiction. It was everyday life. Today, if we're hungry, we open a fridge or an app. We drive to a shop stocked with more food than an entire medieval village would see in a year. But for most people alive in the year 1026, food wasn't something you chose. It was something you fought for, season by season, harvest by harvest. So what did a poor family actually put on the table? And how did they survive on so little for so long? The answer is more complicated and far more human than you might expect. A morning in the cottage. Picture a small cottage somewhere in the English countryside. Smoke curls slowly from a hole in the thatched roof. Inside, the air is thick and warm, smelling faintly of wood smoke and yesterday's pottage. A mother kneels by the fire, stirring a blackened pot. Her husband is already outside, checking the fields before the rain comes. She breaks the last piece of dark bread in half. She gives the larger piece to her youngest child. She tells him she isn't hungry, but she hasn't eaten properly in 2 days. This wasn't unusual. It was simply what love looked like in a world where there wasn't always enough. What was actually on the table? For a peasant family in medieval Europe, the center of nearly every meal was grain, not soft white bread like ours. Their bread was dense and dark, often rye, barley, or oats, sometimes ground together because nothing could be wasted. Wheat, the grain we associate with good bread, was frequently too valuable to eat. It was sold to pay rent or taxes, while the family kept the coarser grains for themselves. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Some of that bread contained tiny fragments of stone, worn loose from the grinding mill. Over a lifetime, this quietly wore down people's teeth. Around the bread came pottage, a thick stew simmered for hours over a low fire. Onions, leeks, cabbage, whatever the garden could offer that week. You could hear it before you saw it. A low, steady bubbling, the wooden bowls waiting nearby, worn smooth from years of use. Meat was rare. Animals were more valuable alive. A cow gave milk for years. A hen gave eggs almost daily. Killing them for meat meant losing that ongoing supply, something no family did lightly. When meat did appear, it was often salted pork, saved sparingly through the winter. And then there was the drink that might surprise you most. Weak, low-alcohol ale, safer than water, was consumed by adults and children alike, not as a treat, as a daily necessity. This wasn't only true in England. In France and Germany, similar grain-based stews simmered in similar cottages. In Scandinavia, families leaned harder on dried fish and hearty rye bread to survive brutal winters. Across the Middle East, poorer households relied on flatbreads, lentils, and dates. In China, rice or millet formed the base of the meal, paired with whatever vegetables the season allowed. In Japan, poor families often ate simple grain porridges alongside pickled vegetables, stretching a small harvest across many meals. Different lands, different grains, the same quiet struggle. When the harvest failed. But bread wasn't actually their biggest problem. Their biggest problem was uncertainty. One bad storm at the wrong moment, one summer too dry, one winter too long. Any of these could destroy the grain a family depended on for an entire year. There was no way to import food from somewhere else. No trucks, no ships bringing surplus grain from another continent. If the local harvest failed, the local people suffered directly, immediately. Imagine opening the grain barrel and seeing only a thin layer left at the bottom. Winter has barely begun. Children were especially vulnerable. Malnutrition slowed their growth and weakened their bodies, making ordinary illnesses far more dangerous than they needed to be. Today, we complain when delivery takes 30 minutes. Back then, families waited months for the next harvest, wondering if it would even come. So what happened when the grain finally ran out? How they survived anyway. They adapted, not with technology, with knowledge, patience, and each other. Preservation became an art form. Salting, smoking, drying, fermenting. These weren't occasional tricks. They were essential skills passed down through generations like family heirlooms. Picture a father slowly pouring grain into a raised wooden granary, checking every corner for rats before sealing it shut for the season. Villages often shared communal ovens since building a private one was too costly for most families. Dough would be carried from house to house, meal after meal, neighbor after neighbor, all baked in the same fire. Families also planted multiple types of grain in the same season, not because one was better, but because if one crop failed, another might still survive. This wasn't guesswork, it was generations of lived experience. And during the worst famines, when nothing else remained, some families made a desperate substitute: bread mixed with ground tree bark or crushed acorns just to fill the stomach one more day. It's a detail that's hard to forget. Perhaps the most surprising thing is how sophisticated all of this really was. These families weren't uneducated in any meaningful sense. They understood soil, weather, and food in ways most of us never need to think about today. They simply solved problems with the tools they had. Feast days and fleeting joy. Life wasn't only gray. On feast days, everything changed, if only for a moment. Roasted meat, honey, one of the only sweeteners available, perhaps fresh cheese, or an extra portion of ale. For one single day, the table looked completely different. And it's worth noting, while poor families ate dark rye bread, the wealthy ate soft white bread, a small but powerful symbol of the gap between the two worlds. These brief moments of abundance made the ordinary days feel even harder to return to, but they also gave people something to look forward to, something worth surviving for. What this tells us about ourselves. Today, we throw away stale bread without a second thought. Back then, every crumb mattered. These families lived with real uncertainty every single day, and still they built traditions, they shared meals, they found meaning in food that we might consider painfully simple. What feels uncomfortable to us, eating the same pottage for days, drinking ale instead of water, going without meat for weeks, was completely normal to them. Not tragic, just life. Final thoughts. The next time you sit down to dinner, remember this. For most of human history, a full stomach wasn't normal. It was a victory. If you had lived 1,000 years ago, watching the sky for signs of rain, working the land with your own hands, do you think you could have adapted? Which part of this way of life would surprise you the most? Let us know what you think. History isn't only written by kings and battles. Sometimes it's written by an empty bowl and the people who somehow found a way to fill it.